Welcome friends to another r/malicious compliance video. If you want to earn some good karma today, make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons down below. That said, our first story of the day is by Karadak1. Boss insists equipment go to a mechanic to save costs, ends up costing him $1,000 more. The context: I'm a new supervisor in property maintenance and the riding lawnmower we have has often broken down. A lot of these problems are from years of not doing preventative maintenance on it, which is something I've started doing recently in order to have the machine working better, for longer, and cutting down on downtime and mechanics costs. I've been spending almost all my free time researching this mower so I know what's wrong when something's wrong, and will be able to tell the difference between a 30-minute, $40 repair I can do, or a 3-day, $600 repair the mechanic needs to do. A few weeks ago, while I was in the middle of starting a maintenance log on the mower, my boss sees me and asks, "Is that thing broken down again?" To which I reply, "No, I'm just trying to make sure that it doesn't break down again." This is when he lets me know that he thinks what I'm doing is a waste of time and money because our biggest expense is labor, so he no longer wants me to work on the mower and instead wants me to take it to the mechanic across the city that charges $110 an hour for labor. The next week, of course, the mower breaks down again. I tell my boss that I think the problem is likely the air filter, and he just tells me to take it to the mechanic. Me and my whole crew spend 45 minutes driving across the city to the mechanic, drop off the mower, and sure enough, they had to replace the air filter, and it took them an entire day. They also told me that they'd looked the whole thing over and found no other issues, and charged us a few $100s. 2 days after getting the mower back from the mechanic, it began having issues again. I knew it wasn't the air filter, but the fuel filter looked extremely dirty. Once again, I told my boss, and he told me, "Take it to the mechanic." Back we go. I tell the mechanics that the fuel filter looks bad and describe the issues I'm having. They say it's probably the fuel pump module, so they'll replace that and don't touch the fuel filters. This is another 3 hours of labor they charge us, plus parts, and the problem still isn't fixed. We get the mower back from them, and once again, it breaks down on someone's front lawn. I call the mechanic, he acts confused, then asked us to bring it back to him for him to work on it more. This time, they keep it for 3 days. I told them something was wrong with the fuel filter, and they insisted it must be the fuel pump, and took the whole fuel system apart just for them to agree with me in the end that the problem was the fuel filter. Essentially, because my boss insisted that whenever there was a problem with the riding mower, we take it to the mechanic even if I can fix it, it cost us nearly a full week of lost work plus over $1,000 in mechanics costs, when I could have had it back up and running within 2 hours and for under $100. Well, let's think about this a little bit. If you were a small business owner running some kind of mowing business, and one of your employees says, "I studied this lawnmower in and out, I can fix it for you no problem, I can tell you exactly what the problem is, you just reimburse me, I'll fix it up." Would you be willing to try that, or would you rather your equipment go to the mechanic to get fixed up? When you think of it in that light, do you blame the boss for still sticking with the mechanic? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is by Evertiro. All expenses paid vacation? Sure thing. Ages ago, I was the senior developer for a company that revitalized other companies. Think of it as sort of a mini Shark Tank. We would find small businesses that had a great idea but were struggling, and we'd help them achieve their goals in exchange for a cut. Sometimes this meant providing development or engineering talent to get a product off the ground. Sometimes it meant providing literal capital. Sometimes it meant providing staffing services. Support staff and experienced executives were commonplace needs. We were also a relatively small company, so it wasn't uncommon for our people to have multiple hats. There was one time when I was working as development lead for one client while acting as interim CTO for another client. It could be a bit chaotic, but it paid pretty well, was a great experience on a wide variety of things I normally wouldn't have had, and was usually pretty fun. So one Friday afternoon, we get a call from a client who was particularly frustrating, a frequent flyer if you will. They seem to make every 30-second fix into an insurmountable problem. I'm going to be intentionally vague about the specific industry the client was in. It's a tiny industry. Anyone in their industry would be able to identify them just from the industry and city. This particular call comes in early in the afternoon. They recently moved things around and now none of their printers work. Obviously, it's mission critical. We do some remote troubleshooting, but can't even get a flicker of life from the device. We spend an hour or so trying to work through what happened, before discovering that there's a really good reason it won't work. The cable didn't reach where they moved it to, so it wasn't actually plugged in. Well, that's about as stereotypical as an IT problem can get, right? Just plug it in and you'll be good to go. But management says that's not the solution they want. While it's totally possible to run a Cat5 line to the new location, they really wanted wireless since that's the big thing these days. Okay, that's easy too. Most of our comparably sized clients had switched to wireless networking for parts of their offices. So we already had the right procedures in place, deployment scripts set up, etc. All they had to do was plug in the device, which could be very easily acquired at any electronics store, and we could remotely handle everything else in a matter of minutes. But nope, management dictates that we absolutely have to have a person on site in the morning to set it up for them. At this point, it's very late afternoon on a Friday, and everyone but me and my boss, the CEO, had gone home for the day. Boss isn't about to lose his weekend, and crap rolls downhill, so I drew the short straw. We reached out to the client to make sure they knew what they were asking. They were in Chicago, we were several states away in the Midwest, nearing the end of day on Friday. If they wanted me to be there by morning, they'd have to pony up for whatever flight we could arrange at short notice. And there was only one flight left that night going from our relatively small airport to Chicago, and the only available seat was in first class. Additionally, it would be taking off in just under 2 hours, meaning I wouldn't have time to get home and pack anything if I was going to make the flight. They reiterated that it was absolutely crucial that I be there in the morning, and they would happily pay for whatever flight was necessary. Additionally, I was told that they would have a room pre-booked at the Palmer House. They regularly used a room there for VIPs and such, and I could charge whatever I needed to the room. Further, they said that if I ended up needing to stay longer than the day, they'd reimburse me for any clothing or essentials I had to purchase since it was so incredibly last minute. Okay, I can live with that. I get to the airport 10 minutes before boarding, make it through the vacant airport, past the TSA checkpoint, and to my gate as they're closing the door, literally the last person on the last flight of the day. I arrive in Chicago and shockingly there's a company car, effectively a limo, literal black car service before Uber was a thing, waiting for me. He takes me to the hotel, as promised, and hands me an envelope before pulling away from the curb. The envelope contains a prepaid debit card and a note saying it had $250 on it for incidentals, but please charge anything I can to the room. Sweet, was expecting it to be a long weekend in grungy clothes. Checked in and went to bed. The next morning, I show up at their office bright and early. I sit around for half of the morning before anyone shows up to let me in. They then show me the new printer area, which is, as expected, well outside of the area of the office which was originally wired for networking, in what was once a break area. I go, yep, that's not gonna work with your old wired hub. Run across the street, literally door to door was one street apart, to the closest electronics store, pick up their shiny new wireless router, run back to their office, plug it in, then get on the closest computer, run through the 30-second setup, run the script that updates the configs for their quirky, antiquated software so it picks up the new printers in the office, and tell the owner that it's all set up. He gets this sort of confused look on his face and says, "Already?" I respond by pointing out that we did tell them in advance that we could do it remotely if they were willing to actually plug the device in for us. And he finally realizes how silly the call out was. But now he feels obligated to save face. I'm instructed that I'm to remain in Chicago until the close of business Monday to ensure there's no issues with the new hardware under actual use. Obviously, it would be physically irresponsible of me to fly out twice in a week. I ask for clarification. They're instructing me to stay checked into the fairly expensive hotel and keep billing things to my room through Monday night? Yes. What am I supposed to do with the rest of the weekend? Is there anything else at their local office that I can fix while I'm here? No, go eat a hot dog and play tourist. Just keep my phone handy and make sure I show up at opening time on Monday. Okay, can do. I go back across the street, pick up a charger for my phone, find a nearby department store and pick up a few changes of cheap clothes. Stop by the hotel to drop off my purchases and spend the rest of the weekend playing tourist. Okay, I did a tiny bit of sightseeing and spent most of the time catching up on sleep, but I did ensure to avail myself of room service for every single meal at their expense. Before showing up bright and early Monday morning, I sat in their office for the majority of the workday before the owner came and found me to give me the travel details for my return flight. He even suggested that I'd done a great job. Really, I didn't do anything but plug a device in and should get a drink before heading to the airport and bill it to the room. As suggested, I went back to the hotel, packed my stuff in my laptop bag, stopped in the bar for a drink — who knew hotels had $100 plus drinks — and headed to the airport. All told, they shelled out about $1,000 just for the room, probably 2/3 of that in room service fees, several hundred in transportation to and from the airport, not to mention the flights, because they didn't want to walk across the street, pick up an easily obtainable piece of hardware, and plug it in. I got a 3.5-day vacation with first-class travel, one way anyway, halfway across the country for doing just that. Bottom line is, OP got to enjoy the vacation every step of the way and then did like 10 minutes of work tops. As long as the company was okay covering it, was willing to pay for it, was wanting to save face for it, and was okay with that, honestly sounds like a great long weekend. Our next story is by Tobob. You can eat at the hotel. A long time ago in the late 90s, when I was a young IT consultant, I was sent out of state on an assignment. The sales manager decided to make all of the travel arrangements for me and my coworker. We were to stay at a Holiday Inn type hotel he booked for us. When I asked about daily expenses and a rental car, the sales manager told me that the hotel had a shuttle that would take us to the work site and we could eat at the hotel restaurant. I tried to argue with him that I'd like to see the town or eat somewhere other than the hotel, but he wouldn't budge. He paid for the flights and the rooms and we could charge our meals to our room. Anything else would be paid for out of our own pockets. I was young and broke, so I didn't have much of a choice. I settled into the expectation that I would have a boring week of hotel for 5 days. When my coworker and I arrived at the hotel, we were quite surprised to find that it wasn't at all a Holiday Inn type hotel, in spite of the fact that it had inn in the name. It was quite fancy, and the rooms were comfortable and spacious. The hotel restaurant, though, was something my lower middle class self had never experienced. This was a restaurant that didn't print prices on the menu. In fact, I couldn't even pronounce half the items listed. Meals were a set cost regardless of what you ordered. Breakfast was $40 per person. Lunches and dinners were $60 per person. Knowing we had no car and no way to expense anything that wasn't charged to the room, my coworker and I dutifully ate 3 meals a day in the hotel restaurant. I had 5 days of filet mignon for breakfast and various gourmet lunches and dinners, while the hotel shuttle took us to and from the workplace all week. Now, years later, I'm not even sure I remember the city I was in or the work I was doing, but I remember a week of filet mignon for breakfast and the look in the eyes of the sales manager when he saw his credit card statement. That was a great trip. You gotta really love that they were trying to pay for the bare minimum and expect the bare minimum, and they accidentally sent them to a place where they could eat filet mignon for breakfast every single day. They tried to pay for Holiday Inn and they ended up paying for a proper holiday. And our final story of the day is by Psycho Steve 10mm. Cancel my vacation with 1 week away. Expect to pay for my lost deposits and loss of tickets. I was working IT for a small law firm in DC that specialized in military law. As a firearms enthusiast, I got along with the combat MOS guys and regularly scored just below the SF guys for corporate range time. I decided to take my vacation time to do a 4-day survival course in another state, Montana, and a 3-day long-range marksman course with a week of couch time to recover. 1 week before I go, I'm told I need to cancel my classes due to the network crashing because they didn't upgrade when I told them to do so. I agreed, but they needed to reimburse me for the cost of the trip. I sent in receipts amounting to about $3,000, to which they refused to pay. After some yelling, I was told, "Well, sue me, and you're fired." Cue the malicious compliance. I packed up my desk and said my goodbyes. I was leaving the whole network in shambles, and due to the ability to find an IT guy to work for what I was paid, and to have a TS clearance, it took them close to a year to get a new network up and running. As per federal law, I had to report the firing to the OPM. OPM came in and took the network due to being the only one with proper clearance to work on it. Like Ron Popeil, who always said, "But wait, there's more." I decided to call every person in the office as a potential witness to sue for wrongful termination and theft of wages. This meant he had to get outside counsel to represent himself in court. I knew the founding partner was bleeding cash, but he said, "Sue me." He moved the venue to a classified court due to the nature of the data in the case. He lost the case, where I was awarded $50,000 in lost wages and damages. 10 grand went to the lawyer. Last I heard, the founding partner moved to Florida to work for a lawyer buddy he made when he was in the Navy. So a totally competent IT guy who's getting underpaid tells you to do something so that your entire network infrastructure won't crater. You ignore that, it craters, and then you demand they cancel their vacation to fix it, otherwise saying "sue me" and you're fired and you won't pay them. It's like, well, surprise when you get sued and they leave. Well, it's like surprise, they just decided to quit and followed through with suing you. Exactly what you were wanting. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So of all these stories I've read today, which is your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you haven't yet, if you could like and subscribe, that would mean a lot to me. Whatever you do, whether it's liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, all of it helps grow this channel and I appreciate the heck out of it. So until next time, I'll see you all tomorrow with some more stories.